Dr. Hurst, can we have the roll call, please?
Absolutely. President Phillips,
Here.
Trustee Clerk Smith-Foltz,
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I didn't hear the pledge starting. I'm present.
Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy,
Good evening, President.
Trustee Reckler,
Good afternoon, present.
Trustee Christian,
Good evening, President.
all is present and accounted for.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hurst. This evening, we have 5 items to be discussed in closed session. The first item is anticipated litigation. The second item is public employee performance evaluation. The third item is public employee discipline, dismissal, release, complaint. And the fourth item is student discipline. The fifth item is public employee appointment. The board is here to take public comment on any one of these items that were just announced to be discussed in closed session. The time allotted for each speaker is 2 minutes. If you are attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form to indicate your desire to speak on one of these items. If participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking on the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. In order to be recognized to speak on Zoom, your hand must be raised before public comment begins. No yielding of time or substitution of speaker is permitted. That said, do we have any public comment on any of these closed session items?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. The board will now adjourn or recess rather into closed session. The open session will recommence at 6:30. Thank you. Para accesar la traducción, oprima el botón del globo. I would like to welcome everyone to this regular meeting of the Board of Education. The mission of the West Contra Costa Unified School District is to prepare students for post-secondary education and to be responsible, thinking, contributing members of our global society. We believe in public education As the most important function in a democratic society, we believe we must treat everyone with courtesy, dignity, and respect. Provide safe and nurturing environments in which to learn, teach, work, and participate. Serve our students by working as partners with our community to develop well-rounded, lifelong learners and contributing members of a global society. Take responsibility for our behavior and performance to ensure the highest possible achievement of all students, employees, and our school community. Provide equitable and essential communication and support for successful learning, teaching, working, and participating. Respect, celebrate, and welcome the diversity, uniqueness, and contributions of all members of our school community. This meeting will provide public comment opportunities on agenda and non-agenda items in person, through the Zoom app, and by telephone. We have changed the public comment format, which will now occur at the beginning of the meeting. Public comment will last for 1 hour and includes any agendized item. The time allotted for each speaker has also been extended to 2 minutes. If you are attending the meeting in person, you will need to submit a request to address the board form. To indicate your desire to speak on an agenda item. If participating via Zoom, you will need to raise your hand by clicking on the appropriate icon in the Zoom app or by pressing *9 if accessing the meeting by phone. In order to be recognized to speak on Zoom, your hand must be raised before public comment begins. No yielding of time or substitution of speakers is permitted. Due to the Brown Act, board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda and do not usually respond to items presented in public comment. The order of business may be changed without notice. The board has recessed from closed session and will return to closed session at the end of this meeting. But in the meantime, Dr. Hurst, do you have anything to report out?
There's nothing else to report out.
Thank you very much, sir. So now we are going to go to WCC USD Public Comment. That is item B3. If you are in the audience and you would like to speak on public comment, please get one of these speaker cards and turn it into the staff. Once public comment begins, you will not be able to turn in a card. You won't be able to get into the queue. So please make sure that you get a speaker card now if you haven't. If you're in the Zoom, Now is also time to raise your hand in the Zoom, because once public comment begins, once again, you will not be able to get into the queue. Right now, we have 12, 13 hands raised in Zoom. So I'm going to do a countdown for folks here in person and in the Zoom. Going once. Saw somebody move. I thought he was going to get a car. Going twice. Gone. All right. The last person online in the Zoom is Elena Harrison. And second to last is Miss Joanna Pace. All right, the first speaker is Tracy Reppert. Yes, ma'am.
I am speaking on behalf of Janie Dalton, who was in an extremely bad car accident yesterday, and she had emergency surgery. When she finally regained consciousness late in the night, she first quickly asked about this school board meeting. That's how important this is to her. And this is what she wrote. I am a mother of 4 with degrees in molecular biology and virology. I am not an anti-vaxxer. The collective argument for mandating a vaccine, herd immunity, however, is no longer tenable when the vaccinated can still spread the virus. I ask that you give the students of West Contra Costa the option of testing until a more broad spectrum vaccine is available. The current vaccines, centered solely around the most toxic and mutable part of the COVID-19 virus, cannot create herd immunity. As new variants emerge, they will evade the vaccine, which was created using the Alpha variant. In fact, we are seeing this already. For example, more than half of the Cal football team has COVID, despite being 99% vaccinated. The 1905 SCOTUS case Jacobson versus Massachusetts held that mandates can only be considered to prevent the spread of contagious disease. A recent groundbreaking study in Lancet shows that fully vaccinated people who got COVID infected others in their household at the same rate as unvaccinated people did. In fact, the vaccinated had just as much viral load in their upper respiratory tract, making them just as contagious. Yale epidemiology professor Dr. Harvey Risch says, I would pull a healthy child out of public school and homeschool before I would give them this vaccine. The current vaccines are still under EAU for kids, and we have absolutely no idea of their long-term effects. My eldest child was vaccine injured last August. We hope that he will recover. Please give these children the option to test until there's a more traditional vaccine that can stop the spread. Covaxin is a whole virion inactivated vaccine with the same virocell technology as the current polio vaccine used for the past 35 years. It will likely be EAU approved for children ages 2 to 18 in the close future. Thank you.
The next speaker is Joey Dalton.
I was just finishing writing up here.
Mr. Dalton, please raise your mask.
Sorry. So first and foremost, I just want to say that I think everybody here, their opinion is pretty important, and we all need to realize that no matter what anybody's view is, their concern is for their kid. That's number one. And if we can't listen to other people's views, then we're not teaching our kids any of the things that we're sending them to school for. So the state is not mandating the COVID-19 vaccine until it receives full FDA approval. At that time, it gets reviewed by the state board, and then the state legislature will vote on it, and it will be added to the list of the 10 vaccines that are already mandated by the state. But until that time, the state is not mandating it. When the state legislature adds it to the list of vaccines, that won't happen until the school year of July 22 at the earliest. What we're asking for is to have a test out option for people who choose not to be vaccinated, either for religious beliefs, health reasons, concerned for their kid for a vaccine that hasn't had full trial done. I don't think it's ridiculous to ask that a vaccine that hasn't gone through a full FDA approval to simply have a test out option. So until that time can happen, I would ask that you offer a test out option for all kids, a weekly test to be administered by the parent or the caregiver at home, paid for by the caregiver at home. And if somebody doesn't pass a weekly test, they will simply be retested immediately. And if they don't pass again, then we go through the same protocol that we did last year. It's not too much to ask, in my opinion, to have a test out option for people who don't want to get their kids vaccinated until it has full FDA approval and is administered by the state through the legislative process. Thank you.
The next speaker is Bud Massey.
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize because I was told that I would have 5 or 6 minutes. So I have a fairly extensive document. 4 years ago, I had 3 cases of arson at my house because I lived just above Pinole Valley High School. Okay, I went down to the school, told them basically what happened. They said they'd take care of it and cut the weeds around the, outer perimeter of the school. They never did. Had another fire. So I went down there and I put up a chain link fence, an 8-foot chain link, partially on their property, I guess. They called it an easement. And, I didn't have any more problems because I put up a fire break on my own property. I put 12 fruit trees in because the hill was starting to slide, as per what the architect found out 10 years ago and put it in writing that whole area is prone to landslides. The school continued to do what they were doing. They demolished the old school. During that time, my house started to slide. I've got cracks in the ceilings, the walls. I've got doors that won't shut. And I've got approximately 21-inch drop in the back of my property because they're bringing in all the heavy equipment. A lot of people don't realize there's water underneath the school. They got aquifers all over the place. When they start bringing in the heavy stuff, it starts pushing down on my property and thus caused my property to get damaged. I had a professional soil person, contractor come out. He gave me a bid of almost $400,000 to underpin my house and to build a retaining wall that would actually hold that side of the, country up. I mean, it's the whole, several houses are being impacted. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. I went back and forth with the school district. I called them a dozen times. I went down there and met with Lewis, and he goes, well, it's the blueprint, and the only way that I'm going to get out of it is if I sue the district. And that's just not acceptable to me. I'm retired. My wife is retired and handicapped. There's no way I'm going to be able to afford $150,000 to pay for a lawsuit.
Mr. Massey, I understand that you were told you'd be given 6 minutes. I have your speaker card. I'm going to give it to the superintendent so he can follow up with you, okay? But the time for this evening is done. But I will give your contact information directly to him.
Okay, would it be all right if this lady brings up some documents to, you got them? Oh, okay, so you got some pictures and the document.
Well,
It'll explain.
if you want to give staff that, so we have the rest of your comments, we can give that to the, just
Okay.
come here, give it to me. It's okay. And this is your information right here, right? All right, you have a blessed day. I'm gonna hand it to the superintendent. That's it, Doc. He'll talk to you though, okay? I gotta go on with the meeting. Thank you. All right, so the next person is Elizabeth Davies, and I'm not catching the last name.
In recent years, there's been a lot of time, energy, and resources dedicated to diversity and inclusion. Overall, an admirable quest. I'm here today to ask that you broaden those goals to include viewpoint diversity, to actively embrace and include students and families that may think differently, may come from different cultures, religions, philosophies, and political backgrounds. We live in a time and place where all but the narrowest mainstream views are censored, and I know it could be much worse. Is the leadership of this district willing to respect those families that put their faith in dissident doctors and scientists? Is the leadership of this district willing to respect those families who have been injured by medical therapies in the past, so are unwilling to embrace this new medical technology? Will the leadership of this district support families for whom getting the jab would violate their sincerely held religious beliefs? Is the leadership of this district willing to examine the codes of Nuremberg, which prohibit coercion in regards to medical procedures? I would like to remind you that the social movements now universally embraced and celebrated all started with dissident citizens widely hated in their own times. For that reason alone, will you consider respecting the dissident families in your own district who declined the jab? There are other ways to mitigate public health impacts that don't violate our human rights. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sheila Swift.
Hi, good evening. I just want to start by saying thank you all for your patience and understanding and for allowing us this opportunity to speak to you and tell you about what's on our mind, what's important to us as parents, to me as a parent. Today, I've been here, this is my 4th time. The last time I was here, I kind of lost my cool and I want to apologize for that. I've become pretty frustrated with the situation. And, but tonight, I did want to reach out and say that, and I'm going to speak tonight about a person you may not have heard of. Her name is Maddie DeGaray. Maddie was one of approximately 1,000. There are over 28,000 children in our school district. If 1 in 1,000 of them have a serious reaction like Maddie to the vaccine, you would have 28 severely injured children from the vaccine. So Maddie is a girl who volunteered for the Pfizer 12 to 15-year-old trial, along with her 2 older brothers. Maddie was one of 1,200 kids in the trial that got the actual vaccine. In this trial, they gave her a lower dose of mRNA than the actual dose 12 to 15-year-olds are now given. Within 12 hours of her second shot, Maddie was screaming in agony. She had pain in her heart, shooting down her neck and all over her body. She's now unable to hold her head up. She's now unable to eat. She eats through a feeding tube. She's now unable to walk, and she's been back to the emergency room 64 times. At first, the hospital called it anxiety, and after months, Pfizer reported Maddie's case as abdominal pain to the FDA. Thanks for your time.
Next speaker is George Cole.
Good evening. I want to begin by thanking all of you for all you do. I appreciate it. As Mr. Phillips begins each meeting with a shared statement about dignity and respect, with all due respect, I cannot see anything mutually respectful about a mandate to force inject something foreign into another person's bloodstream. My son needs to go to school. Why would you enact a policy that prevents him from having the same kind of education as his peers? I understand that teachers are allowed exemptions. Why are students not allowed these very same exemptions? Mutual respect, body autonomy, free speech, human rights, civil rights, anti-discrimination are all just words and slogans unless we actively, relentlessly preserve and implement them into our society. These values are under attack. I teach my son that a free society is built on protecting these principles, especially the rights of those we disagree with. Mandates are rapidly bringing back institutional and societal discrimination. I know this because it is happening in real time at El Cerrito High School to my son. There needs to be more encouragement from you, Dr. Hurst, to make certain all children are not subjected to any kind of shunning or discrimination. My son's teacher asked him in front of the class if he was vaccinated and why. We can do better than this, and we should. Do we know how many of these kids already have natural immunity? If these are science-based policies, why is this being ignored? Wouldn't we prefer to not vaccinate children, if at all possible, if they show the T-cell and antibody immunity? Thank you for your time and for listening to my comments and questions. I will follow up with an email to each of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cole, please raise your mask. Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Elena Andres.
Hi, I'm the mother of an 8th grader who has some great growth issues. Last Monday, I took her to a pediatrician at Kaiser Richmond. I discussed my concern over how this particular vaccine could potentially interfere with my daughter's development. The pediatrician said there was no data on that, so she didn't know, but said, "Don't worry, you have time till the next school year, and in the meantime, you can run some more tests for your daughter. But by the time you have to vaccinate her, we'll have more data on how this vaccine affects children's development." When I told her that I had no time and I had to vaccinate my child now in order to meet the school district's January 3rd deadline, she was shocked, saying, "But you cannot mandate a vaccine that is still under emergency use authorization. That's illegal. Which school district is that?" This was Kaiser Richmond. You parents should raise a stink. To be clear, I'm not anti-vaccine. Both my kids have received all 10 childhood vaccines, and both my husband and I are vaccinated against COVID-19. But I am against a mandate of a vaccine that has not been fully approved by the FDA and for which there is no long-term data. I am here to ask the board to allow for weekly testing.
Ma'am, I'm just going to pause for a moment. I don't mind anyone in here expressing any views whatsoever about the vaccine, but I need people to keep their mask up. That's the deal.
All right. I'm here to ask the board to allow for weekly testing as an alternative option until California's statewide school vaccine mandate for a fully approved vaccine goes into effect next school year. Other neighboring districts like Berkeley Unified allow for weekly testing, a great option for parents who are not comfortable with the EUA vaccines. I'm concerned that one zip code determines if one's child must be jabbed with an EUA vaccine, or they have the privilege of being allowed to wait for a fully approved vaccine if they chose so. This is anything but equitable. Is it because we are a poor school district? Is it because poor people are deemed to be less educated and therefore unable to think for themselves or make the right choices for their children? Thank you.
So, Mr. Shawls, you're actually the next speaker, but you have a request to address the board. Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you so much. And we're going to, so after this is done, then we're going to have you do your request, okay? So we're going to go online now to folks in the Zoom. Yes, sir. What's your name? You're right. I'm sorry. Paige Reddit, you're up.
Good evening, board. My name is Paige Reddit, a district father. Firstly, I just wanted to say how grateful I am to all the teachers and staff making this year a very successful return. I'm here to challenge the vaccine mandate and advocate for our children's right to in-person education should parents choose not to vaccinate for COVID at this time. I'm here to affirm my rights as a parent to know what is best for my child and to make decisions in consultation with my family's doctor. I've attended every FDA and CDC public meeting for all of the COVID vaccine EUAs and authorizations. Based on the trial data and analysis, there are many valid reasons and concerning questions about the vaccine being mandated. COVID vaccines for any student under 16 are still under emergency use. A key tenet of EUA ensures individuals have choice without consequence. Additionally, regarding effects and side effects, there are 875,000 reports within the government's VAERS database of COVID vaccine adverse events. We simply don't know any long-term data because this has been under 1 year in the making. Given the district's rapid decision to mandate, I'm skeptical the board has even done their complete due diligence in attending these key meetings and reviewing all necessary data. Here are a few quotes from the recent meeting approving the vaccine for 5 to 11. Dr. Meisner from the FDA, professor of pediatrics at Tufts, said, "The issue is side effects occurring after this vaccine. It's not even clear the vaccine will reduce rates of transmission. I'm worried if we say yes, states are going to mandate administration of this vaccine to children in order to go to school. And I do not agree with that. I think that would be an error at this time until we get more information." Dr. Rubin, editor of New England Journal of Medicine, stated, "We are never going to learn about how safe this vaccine is unless we start giving it." What kind of logic is that, by the way? "That's just the way it goes," he stated. That's how we found out about other rare events. So as you can see, the people approving these have their own reservations beyond safe and effective. CDC also showed that myocarditis rates in males ages 12 to 15 was 20 times higher, and in males 16 to 17, 36 times higher than the baseline rates. This is yet another reason many of us are so adamant for the ability to make our own risk calculation and our own decisions for our family. I'm not against vaccination in general, but the bottom line is there is scientific debate about the efficacy and safety for children. We need more time. In the meantime, I request the board reconsider
Sir,
the
please
mandate.
conclude your comment.
I request the board reconsider the mandate, align with state policy and timing at a bare minimum versus superseding, guarantee in person for all children, and emphasize policies of unity over exclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're now going to go to public comment in the Zoom. Thank you.
Our first public speaker is Hulan Barnett. You may unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I want to say, first of all, I'm really proud of my community. I am so proud of my community because they can smell and they recognize Nazi behavior, slave master behavior. And that's what West Contra Costa has become. I sent an email to the school district outlining this behavior, especially when you're talking about children from 5 to 11 years old. And I'm glad even parents that are older than that, have children older than that, are recognizing the behavior of the school district. So and the thing I'm glad you guys also, these parents have done is they've done their homework. No other school district has a website that says mandate and that almost is threatening parents. So the website in itself is menacing, draconian, Nazi type of behavior. And that's what it is, because we know that after 9/11, America invaded a country based on a lie. We know also what happened with Katrina. We know about the war on drugs. We know about the bailout of Wall Street. We know about the corruption in America. And then you want us to sacrifice our children based on lies? You as board members, if you have any type of insight, should know better and know that we're not going to accept this. And so I say to all the parents, you don't have to accept it. Just pull your kid out when we get to that point in time. Don't leave your kid in West Contra Costa Unified School District. Take them out. There is an option. We don't have to beg them. That's not the only option, because we don't have to feel like we're helpless. And that's what people like. They like for you to feel like you're a victim. I know my daughter won't be attending West Contra Costa if there's anything like this and there are other options. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Lauda Brazil. You may unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm a parent of a student who attends a WCC USD school. I, like many other parents, teachers, and staff, am opposed to the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. I think I speak for the majority of us when I say I am highly concerned and quite frankly disgusted that a vaccine that hasn't even been fully approved for its safety yet is being forced on us and our children. For those of you who say that it's not being forced, I guess you're right. No one is physically holding anyone down and giving them the vaccine. You're simply telling district employees that they will no longer have a job. You're simply telling students that you will rip away the social interaction and the little bit of mental and emotional stability that they've just started to regain after being separated from one another for a year. If this is about safety, then why is a vaccinated student who has been exposed to COVID allowed to return to school immediately, even though it's been proven that vaccinated people can still spread COVID and they don't require a COVID test, but my child who's unvaccinated has to stay home for 10 days and isn't even allowed to return with a negative COVID test until day 6 or 7. Why is it okay for teachers and staff to be unvaccinated on campus because of a religious exemption, and they have the option to do weekly testing, yet our kids aren't allowed any exemption, any religious exemption? Why can't our kids be unvaccinated and test weekly like the staff and teachers are being allowed to do? Why are our kids being discriminated against? If it's about safety, then why is a vaccine that isn't fully FDA approved yet, that isn't even mandated by the state of California yet, that is causing kids to collapse in cardiac arrest, that is being halted in other countries because of the heart risk to kids, being forced on a population that has the highest recovery rate, with most cases being asymptomatic? I guess it's because it's the safety of the district that we're talking about, since they are held harmless of all liability if, God forbid, our kids go into cardiac arrest or worse. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is JWC. Please state your first and last name for the record. You may unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Joan Wallner. This district is moving faster than the state, I believe partially to act as a test subject to see how much pushback you receive and to inform legislature how to deal with said pushback. Under the 4th Amendment of our Constitution, I do not give permission for my information or my testimony here tonight to be shared for any purposes except directly to this board here tonight. The state's order won't go into effect until at least July 2022. And only if the FDA grants formal approval to a vaccine for students younger than 16. All of this while ignoring vaccine injury and uptick in vaccine-induced deaths in this age group. Have you not seen that data? I question the legality of districts imposing a mandate before the FDA actually approves the vaccine for younger children. I question the FDA in general. It's totally justifiable that parents want to wait for the proper safety data. Let kids test and have personal belief exemptions until a vaccine has gone through the proper channels. There's been no major disruptions from COVID for the last 3 months. The kids have been in school despite there not being a mandate, which is the goal, right? To protect kids and their families and provide an equitable education. If we're already achieving that, why do we need a mandate? Black and Latino Californians in low-income zip codes have lower vaccination rates than the state average. Are you prepared to vote on anything that could force over half of the Black and brown students out of the district? Are you prepared for potential civil rights lawsuits? Community organizers are worried that students who may need in-person instruction the most will be turned away at school. The state's overreaching leader himself has routinely warned of the social emotional impacts of distance learning. But here you are, considering further segregating people, this after years of preaching equity. You are creating an environment of segregation, oppression, and as Mr. Cole mentioned, class bullying. In addition, data supports the fact that vaccinated individuals have breakthrough infections, can spread COVID, have reduced immunity, have severe side effects, can die. I question why you are mandating for segregation, breakthrough infections, reduced immunity in our children, and possible death. I question your motives.
Our next public speaker is Stella Miranda. You may unmute yourself.
Good evening, trustees and Superintendent Hurst. I would like to ask if any of you here tonight are experts in virology or have a degree in epidemiology. I would like to know where you received your data or your information to determine these emergency use authorization vaccines are safe to administer to our children. My husband worked in research for 26 in medical research for 26 years with the top scientists. It takes 10 to 15 years of many studies to approve a medication or a vaccine by the FDA. These COVID vaccines were made in 8 months, and there's little data to determine that they are safe. May I remind you that this vaccine is still under emergency use authorization. Frequently, people accuse parents of being anti-vaccination, but no, we're far from that. We simply want a safe vaccine for our kids with no mRNA gene therapy. I believe that West Contra Costa Unified School District lacks the authority to mandate a new vaccine for school attendance and that they are in violation of state, federal, and constitutional law. 2 lawsuits have been filed in Superior Court arguing that only the state, not the local districts, have the authority to mandate vaccines to school children. Further denying in-school learning is a direct violation of federal law under the Every Student Succeeds Act. The Constitution states that kids living in the United States have the right to a free public education, and the Constitution requires that all children be given equal educational opportunities, no matter what their race, ethnic background, religion, or sex, or whether they're rich or poor, citizens or non-citizens. According to the Department of Public Health, students who have an IEP may continue to receive all necessary services as identified in the IEP, regardless of their immunization status. I want to remind you that you must follow state and federal laws. Failure to do so may result in legal actions against the school district and each one of you individually. You have no jurisdiction in deciding if our children should be vaccinated. We are not co-parenting with the school board nor the school district. We are putting our children in no way are we putting our children in harm's way for an experimental vaccine. The school board needs to review this reckless, unconstitutional vaccine mandate. We entrust you with our children, and And if you cannot demonstrate these vaccines are safe and fully approved by the FDA, you must consider reversing your decision on these vaccine mandates immediately. Thank you for your time.
Our next public speaker is Michael Hernandez. You may unmute yourself.
Hello, we are 20 months in dealing with COVID, and we understand that respiratory diseases circulate year-long and wait until late in the year. It's an influenza that focuses on common cold and respiratory diseases. If we had such a vaccine that we would eradicate the common cold, influenza, and respiratory disease since day one. This will never stop infection because that's not how influenza works. In 2014, there was an outbreak of the mumps from the National Hockey League from two people. One was unvaccinated and one had unknown vaccinated status. Sounds like a great argument for a vaccine. The state of Vermont, as of October 25th, 2021, which has the highest vaccinated state, reported 1,127 new breakthrough cases, infections among fully vaccinated people over the 2-week reporting period. Health officials have said breakthrough cases are to be expected, given that Vermont has a large and expanded fully vaccinated population. There is no vaccine that prevents you from being infected. Once you get infected, you shed pathogens. It's not a foolproof method. It reduces the odds, but does not eliminate the odds. From the CDC website, it does provide the age group death from starting of January 4th, 2020 to November 6th, 2021. Remind you that total positive cases is 47.4 million. Now, the age group of death is 0 to 4, 210. Age group 5 to 18, 490. Kids are more in danger in getting the flu than COVID. The majority of people that want freedom taken away from the illusion of safety. An average human does not want to be free, they want safety, which is wrong. We are teaching our kids to give up our freedom for the sake of security that does not exist. A medical solution that does not entirely work by forcing you to get, which is madness.
Next public speaker is David Mochil. You may unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is David Moodgill. I'm the parent of 2 children going to school in West Contra, Costa County. One of my children is 19 and against my best wishes went and got vaccinated. I am not anti-vax. They have all their regular shots. We all do. I'm anti-COVID vax because I've also worked for the University of California, San Francisco for 39 years in research, supporting doctors and scientists for a mission to have better global health. This is a research project. You are turning our children into mice. They are not mice, they are children. What you guys have imposed is going to have serious long-term effects that are unmeasurable right now. We have no clue. I've seen research take 20 years to come up with miracles or fail. This is just a shot in the dark to try something. The CDC itself says that masking is the best way to reduce this and has recommended that masking is even better than vaccination because vaccination does not work for everybody. Every individual is built different. And the vaccine can only react on those people's systems who will allow it. And if people already have a hyperactive system, it will override. The other thing I want to quickly bring to the public's attention from an article I read is that 4 of the board members received money from the teachers union, which pushed for this vaccine mandate, but there's no equity with this. I think that you should recuse yourself if you receive funding or help from the teachers union and voted on this. You shouldn't, this I see as a conflict of interest. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Jennifer Murphy. You may unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Murphy. I'm a registered nurse in Richmond and a mother to a 12-year-old in WCC USD. I'm speaking today against the COVID vaccine mandate for WCC USD students. In 2015, a law was passed by the California legislature. It mandated a list of 10 childhood immunizations so that children can attend all schools in California. Prior to 2015, a parent in California could fairly easily opt their child out of childhood immunizations to continue with in-person learning based on their personal beliefs. Many parents were angered when these exemptions were removed, and they contacted their state representatives who lobbied for an additional clause in the bill that stated, if any new vaccines are added to the childhood vaccine schedule, they must allow for personal belief exemptions. With a personal belief exemption, your child is allowed to attend in-person schooling. I never thought that I would be accusing members of the school committee, the superintendent, and the chief medical officer for Contra Costa County of breaking the law, but ignorance of the law is not a valid excuse to break the law or not doing your due diligence in learning what the current law is. I implore the school committee to include personal belief exemptions in the unlawful COVID vaccine mandate that you are haphazardly inciting. If you do not include personal belief exemptions, you will be further breaking legislative law. Weekly or bi-weekly testing of students can easily be done in lieu of the COVID vaccine. I've heard many members of this committee say they trust the science. Norway, South Africa, United Kingdom, and Taiwan have all halted the second dose of Pfizer vaccine in 12 to 17-year-olds due to the risk of myocarditis. Which science should we trust in these circumstances? Typically in healthcare, you always vie for the least intrusive intervention. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Don Gosney. You may unmute yourself.
Thank you. You know, as I've emailed to you all, we do not have the community oversight of our nearly $750 million bond program that our community demands. This is largely because the district has not fulfilled their obligation to process applications from highly qualified members of the community that want to serve. Your own board policy calls for 17 members on the CVOC, and state law calls for a minimum of 7. For nearly half a year, though, you've only had 6, and after the new year, you may be down to only 5. The district is out of compliance with state law. The good thing, though, is that you have it within your power to correct this injustice. As I wrote in the emails I sent to you all, you have 4 applications in the queue, with 1 sitting there for 15 months, 2 more for 11 months, and a 4th for 7 months. All 4 of these applications are for highly qualified community members who have served on the CBOC in the past, with 2 of them having served as the CBOC chair and another as the vice chair. I've explained the details in my email about how you can very easily correct this lack of compliance, all the while serving the needs of the very same people you all took an oath to represent. The first step, though, is to stand tall and make sure that these are on the very next board meeting agenda so they can be acted upon before the next CBOC meeting on December 13th. At that meeting, the CBOC will elect their leadership for 2022. Doesn't it make sense that it would best serve our community to maximize the pool of candidates for those leadership positions? The next item of concern is something I heard from my sources at El Cerrito High School, where the dining tables were moved from the cafeteria to the patio so the students could dine in the open air. While this may sound like a great idea, these are tables that were never designed to be used in the open air where the rain falls on them and they are saturated with dew overnight. These tables have been destroyed. I can easily see where it might cost $20,000 to $30,000 to replace these tables. How many teachers are we going to have to lay off to come up with the funding for the new tables? And lastly, I hope the board can address the rumors that have been coming to my way where district staff have asked our local police departments to refrain from publicly reporting on the acts of violence in some of our schools, students against student violence, as well as student against teacher violence. There have also been rumors about weapons found on campus that the police have been asked to stay quiet about. Please tell us that we don't have a cover-up in place. Thank you very much.
Our next public speaker is Dan Mcdonne. You may unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks for your service, board. Can you hear me okay? I am a parent, a father of 3 teenage boys. of my own. And in July, we became the guardians for a teenage girl, 16-year-old girl, whose mother passed away 6 days after her second Pfizer shot of sudden cardiac death. She was found in her bed by her 19-year-old son at 11 o'clock in the morning. She was a perfectly healthy 47-year-old woman whose only misgiving was believing in this quote unquote science, and was killed by, in my opinion, Pfizer. We've filed a CDC VARS report. We have a number for that. And so we are not anti-vax per se, anti-experimental shot, and are not going to be giving that shot to our teenage boys, and they are at heightened risk, which is now, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many studies exist that show the heightened risk from vaccination, COVID vaccination for teenage boys, and the number of countries that have elected to engage in either an outright moratorium or a revised schedule for people under 30, particularly males who are at heightened risk. It's really unconscionable to me that this board would proceed with a vaccination mandate in light of the new information. I understand everyone's trying to do the best by the kids, and that's to be commended. However, as the information continues to evolve, it certainly would appear to a sensible human being that that moving forward at full steam ahead would not make sense in light of the developing information, both locally and around the planet, who are making more sensible decisions to maintain the health of their children. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Joanna Pace. You may unmute yourself.
Good evening, board and superintendent. First, I'm a community member, and first I would like to thank the staffs members who've put the curtain behind you there in the Dijon auditorium. It makes it much easier to see your faces on the Zoom tiles, so thank you for that. And I want to thank the board member or the staff member who posts in the chat how many people are in the rooms, so those of us at home can know how many people there are both on the Zoom and in the room. Finally, I have a request that we community members worked hard to get in their applications to serve on the 7-Eleven committee, which the material that went out to parents and community said that the makeup of that board would be decided at a meeting in November, and I see it's not on the agenda. So if you could put something in the agenda that lets community members know when you will actually make that decision. Thank you.
Our last public speaker of tonight is Ceylon Harrison. You may unmute yourself.
Thank you. Good evening, board. How you guys doing tonight? I just want to say thank you for the district coming and OASA office coming to speak to the Black parents around our concerns and answering some questions. We're still waiting for some questions to be answered. I just feel that the district needs to make sure we have options for everybody to have equity in learning. We need to make sure that the options are clear, and giving more options is okay because no one was ready and prepared for how we were going to do this. So I think we can look at more options so everybody can feel safe and our communities can stay safe. And I also want to thank you guys for bringing more programs into our district, the programs that are on the agenda. I thank you guys for that because during this time, Black students are really not having equity around education. So continuing to provide programs and ensuring, keeping one of your resolutions that you guys were going to watch the data is very important, that we have effective Black programs that are data driven. So thank you so much. Have a good evening.
This concludes our public comment for tonight.
Thank you to everyone who gave public comment in the audience and who gave public comment on the Zoom as well. We need to go back to clean up something. Dr. Hurst, is there a first report out? And I say first because the board's going back into closed session. Is there a first report out from closed session?
Yes, we would like to report out that the board did approve 2 stipulated expulsions, and the vote was as follows: 4 yeses, 1 no for the first stipulated expulsion. The no was President Phillips. The second stipulated expulsion was 4 yeses, 1 no. The no was President Phillips. Then 1 transfer was also approved by the board. The vote was 4 yeses, 1 abstain. The abstain was President Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hurst. We are now going to move on to a request to address the board. This is by Mr. Mark Shawls. He will be addressing the board regarding the vaccine mandate. When Mr. Shawls begins, you'll have 5 minutes. Please don't start the time till he actually begins.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to address the board. My wish is that you will be open-minded. During the mandate meeting, 2 trustees asked many questions that were left unanswered and that still remain unanswered, as they have confirmed to me. I found their questions relevant and insightful. They probed important areas of the mandate and possible consequences. The district did not fully inform the board as board policy requires. Disregarding their questions doesn't build trust with the community, it erodes it. During the meeting, Trustee Phillips said that sometimes leaders have to follow. I greatly appreciated the passion with which he spoke out, but I disagree with his choice of whom to follow. There are many points in Dr. Farnatano's presentation that are easily rebutted. Here are 4. 1, he presented statistics that we are to infer would apply to our district if it had a vaccine mandate. Given a few minutes and the opportunity, it is easy to demonstrate that his analysis was incomplete and the statistics he presented were 8 times higher than what he should have stated if he had done a more complete analysis. 2, comorbidities are the simultaneous presence of 2 or more diseases or medical conditions in a patient. I do not recall him mentioning comorbidities. Comorbidities are significant in any prediction of a COVID-19 infection outcome. Generally, healthy students should not be put into a situation of unknown long-term risk when it is arguably not necessary. He downplayed natural immunity. Yet 1 month before the meeting, a peer-reviewed study concluded that prior infection immunity was many more times better than vaccination immunity with the Pfizer vaccine. And on October 29th, the CDC updated an article and stated, the immunity provided by vaccine and prior infection are both high, but not complete. And 4, he commented on mRNA vaccine safety in the long term by implying that since traditional vaccines are safe, then mRNA vaccines are similarly safe. They are not the same technology. You need evidence to make claims, and any claim of long-term safety of mRNA vaccines is purely conjecture. FDA-approved drugs have been recalled due to the harm they have caused. Lawsuits have been successful against drug companies whose FDA-approved drugs have caused harm in the long term. Only the test of time showed that they were injurious. No board members challenged any of Dr. Farno's comments. This also erodes trust. Science takes time. The emerging understanding is that natural immunity is better than vaccine immunity. The vaccine is being treated as a one-size-fits-all solution. It doesn't. The mandate was rushed without a clear understanding. This erodes trust. Section 49405 of the California Code of Education reads, the control of smallpox is under the direction of the State Department of Health Services, comma, and no rule or regulation on the subject of vaccination shall be adopted by school or local health authorities. The same code only mentions both vaccination and COVID-19 in section 32092. Subsection D reads, this section shall not be construed as inferring that vaccination of school staff or pupils is a prerequisite for providing in-person instruction. These statutes clearly demonstrate the school board typically does not have the authority to mandate COVID-19 vaccinations on students. The district has not detailed why it believes it has that authority. District actions in opposition to these statutes and lack of justification erodes trust. FDA Advisory Committee member Dr. Rubin, when speaking about using the Pfizer vaccine on youth last month, said, "We're never going to learn about how safe the vaccine is until we start giving it." He is correct. There are currently no studies or other evidential support demonstrating long-term safety. The FDA doesn't know the long-term outcomes. They are new and untested with respect to time. We do not want our children to be experimented on like lab rats. Again, trust erodes. Our neighboring district in Berkeley is offering a testing option to those who wish to avoid mRNA vaccination. Why must it be different for us? This is an inequity manifested by our board. The district and board offer teachers a personal belief exemption. Why not students? Why are they not afforded the dignity of equitable treatment when it comes to personal beliefs? These inequities and others erode trust. The board has chosen to neglect its own policies, bylaws, and governance documents. It has chosen to ignore the lack of evidence demonstrating long-term safety of mRNA vaccines. The board has chosen to avoid being fully informed. And arguably, the board has chosen to ignore the law regarding its lack of authority to make rules or regulations regarding the subject of vaccination. This needs to end. Trustee Smith-Folds has the correct position. You must follow the policies, bylaws, and governance standards and cannot vote to adopt the resolution when they are not followed. It is neither right, equitable, nor ethical. It erodes trust. In conclusion, I propose that a new resolution be passed that provides a testing option to those who would rather wait for an FDA-approved, less risky traditional vaccine like Covaxin. Students would continue in-person education and extracurricular activities unaltered. A new resolution that allows what I have proposed would be an equitable compromise. It would
Mr.
return
Scholz, your time is up. If you can please conclude, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I have probably 20 seconds left. It would return district staff to focusing directly on promoting education in the district instead of performing tasks associated with the vaccine mandate. The district would show that it is interested in all stakeholders' concerns and not subordinate education to personal interests or beliefs or pressure groups. It would be a step toward improving relationships in the district by promoting partnership and addressing all stakeholders' concerns. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Scholz. Next, we're going to go on to item B5, which is agenda review and adoption. Board, do you have anything that you wish to remove from the consent calendar? Trustee Reckler? I'm just looking at you instead of looking at the computer screen.
I know, it's so weird. I believe, Dr. Hurst, you're going to pull C10 from consent?
Yes.
President Phillips, I don't know if we're going in order, but I would like to pull C2.
Okay. Trustee Reckler, did you have anything you wanted to pull?
No, that's it. Oh, sorry. No, that's it. Thank you so much.
Okay, C2. And Trustee Smith-Folds, is there a particular one on C2 or is it the whole thing?
I want to pull the whole item for discussion, please.
Okay. So C2 is being pulled for discussion, and Dr. Hurst, just to clarify, C10, you want it off of the agenda. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Also, we will be bringing C11 back again, but we want it to remain. The reason why we'll be bringing it back is just for a salary, competitive salary survey that we're doing, just so the board can see that.
So you want us to vote on C11 and you want us to bring it back and vote on it again?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are there any other changes to this consent calendar? Okay. All right. So can I have a motion to adopt this agenda with the following changes? Item C2 is pulled for discussion. And item C10 is eliminated from the agenda, at least for now.
So moved, President Phillips.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Gonzalez Hoy. It's been moved by Gonzalez Hoy and seconded by Christian. Board, on the vote, and this evening, we're starting with Mr. Christian.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez Hoy, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. Thank you very much, board. Okay, now we're going to go on to item B6, which is approval of minutes. We have minutes for August 25, September 8, and September 22, as well as September 23. Board, are there any corrections to those minutes? Any of those minutes? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt all all four sets of minutes?
So moved, President Phillips.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Gonzalez Hoy, seconded by Christian. On the vote,
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez Hoy, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. The motion carries. Thank you so much. We are now going to go on to resolution number 41-2122, Seek American Awareness and Appreciation Month. Mr. Trujillo, would you like to read this? Or the resolve clauses?
Yes. For 7.
No problem.
Are we on resolution? Are we on number 7?
Yes, sir.
We
Number
got
7.
resolve clauses. Okay. Now therefore be it resolved that West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education recognizes and acknowledges the significant contribution made by the Californians of Sikh heritage to our state, and by adoption of this resolution seeks to afford all residents the opportunity to better understand, recognize, and appreciate the rich history, shared principle of Sikh Americans, their religion and its tenets of their faith, and the important role that Sikh Americans play in furthering mutual understanding and respect among all peoples.
Thank you very much. Board, are there any questions on this? All right, seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Moved by Smith Folds. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Christian. Board, any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Christian, please start the vote.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez Hoy, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. Motion carries. Thank you. We are now going to go to resolution number 42-2122, Native American Heritage Month, and Mr. Gonzalez Hoy will read the resolve clauses for us.
Thank you, President Phillips. Now therefore be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education recognizes the month of November 2021 as National Native American Heritage Month, and encourages all educational communities to commemorate this occasion with appropriate instructional activities.
Thank you very much, sir. Board, are there any questions regarding this resolution? Seeing none, any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Christian, please start the vote.
Christian, yes.
Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, you know what? We started a vote and it was not moved. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez Hoy. Mr. Christian, I'm going to take that yes vote as a motion to adopt. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Christian and seconded by Gonzalez Hoy. Mr. Christian, now please start the vote.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez Hoy, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. Motion carries. Thank you so much. Now we are going to go to resolution number 21-22 American Education Week, and our superintendent will read the resolve clauses.
Now therefore be it resolved that the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Education recognizes November 15th through the 19th, 2021 as American Education Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, board. Are there any questions? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Smith Folds, seconded by Christian. Board, any discussion? Mr. Trujillo, you should come closer to us. You're just way down there on the end. We love you. You should, when you get a chance, come closer. All right, is there any second? We got a second, which was Christian. All right, board, no discussion, right? All right, let's start the vote.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to our consent calendar. Board, I'm just going to remind you that C2 has been pulled for discussion. Meanwhile, C10 is not on our agenda for tonight. Can I have a motion to adopt the consent calendar?
So moved, President Phillips.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Gonzalez Hoy, seconded by Christian. There is no discussion on this. Mr. Christian, please begin the vote.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go on to item D, which is the superintendent's report.
We're going to ask if you could bring up the report, please. So we'd like to begin in memoriam to individuals. We first like to recognize Mr. Alex Johnson, who's a retired maintenance supervisor. He passed away. Mr. Johnson worked for the district for 26 years. We'd also like to recognize Ms. Deborah Hawakia Wing, retired teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing, passed away. Ms. Hawakia Wing worked for the district for 13 years. Our thoughts go out to the family and friends in the loss of their loved one. Next slide. So we wanted to begin the presentation, just letting you know that there's 3 portions of our presentation this evening. Next steps in our equity audit. We also have representatives from LSA here, and also Mr. Booker, our safety consultant, is going to be talking about COVID response. And then also we'll be giving an update on the virtual academy. So as you know, over the past month, we've been having the equity audit. We've had part 1 and a portion of part 2. We wanted to let you know that portion of part 2, the last portion of part 2 will be concluded at the end of this month, at the beginning of December. We also want to let you know that there has been an audit of our board of trustees as well. And there's findings and recommendations coming from that audit. And I'm requesting the board to consider a special board meeting of November the 29th to review those findings and recommendations from the board audit. We also wanted to share with the public and with the board that this now begins officially our start for the planning of our strategic plan process. I've shared this all along since I've been here, that really we would go through the equity audit process. We would look at every department. We would look at all of our data. And then we would start the process of our vision, our equity vision, our anti-racism statement, our mission, our core values. And I want to share with you that we're going to be starting the planning right away and thinking about the process. And what we will be doing is inviting a cross-section of the community to start planning these conversations. The conversations and the actual operations of the vision, mission, core values, and anti-racism statement will actually begin in January, but those teams will start immediately and start having planning sessions. The plan now and the plan will develop, and I'll continue to bring this information back to the board and to the public. But the plan right now is to really engage the community by trustee area. So we have 5 trustee areas, and to really engage each area 3 times. So what we're sharing is having the first session, really engaging the community, say for instance, trustee area 1, and start having conversations with trustee area 1 about vision. What is our vision for our students? What is our vision around equity as well? And then also cover mission, have conversations around our anti-racism statement, and then core values. So that's just 1 session for trustee area 1. And we will do that for each trustee area, and it'll be open up to the entire community. So if you think about this right now, the thought is that we would have 3 sessions for each trustee area around the vision, anti-racism statement, mission, and core values. So again, some of that processing is going to happen right away with the teams, but then the actual meetings will start in January and go through February. Then you've heard me talk also about the graduate level profile. And I've shared since I've been here, the graduate level profile is really what do we want our students to know and be able to do when they graduate. So I wanted to share with you, a lot of those conversations is going to come out of those community engagement meetings when we start talking about the vision around equity, when we start developing our anti-racism statement, when we start talking about our core values and our mission. All of that conversation will lead to what are the skills we want our students to know and be able to do. And from those conversations with the community, we'll be able to develop our graduate level profile. And again, it'll be a community engagement process. And that will be a document that defines what the skills will be that we want our students to know and be able to do when they graduate. Again, all of these are community conversations. We're defining the direction for our district. And that will also occur in January, February. Then I want to share with you March, April timeframe. You've heard me talk about this concept since I've started here, and that is the scorecard. It's a data scorecard. The data scorecard just simply allows us to report out the progress. How are we doing as a district in multiple areas? And we will define together how often we will be reporting out, but there will be a solid structure for all internal and external stakeholders to be able to see how we are doing on multiple measures so that you are aware at all times. So I wanted to let you know we're going right according to the plan that we've articulated since I've been here. We would go through the equity audit, and then we would immediately start the strategic planning process. So I wanted to share with you that tonight that process is beginning right now. Next slide. And then we're going to turn it over to Mr. Booker for COVID response. Sorry, Board President.
Before we do turn it over, I know there are going to be several presentations, and I just want to ask board members if they have any questions about essentially the first part of this presentation that Dr. Hurst just did. If you do, I am asking you to, because we have a lot of work to do tonight and we have to go back into closed session, I'm asking you to limit your questions to 4. But do you have any questions for Dr. Hurst, what he just presented? We would start with you. The first 2 gentlemen said no. Mrs. Reckler, do you have any questions on this? What
Oh, I
Dr.
apologize for that. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and Trustee Smith Folds?
I do have a couple of questions. Will these community meetings be a hybrid meeting with Zoom in real time? So the conversation won't be recorded and then people who watch it have a chance to respond? Or will the community meetings be hybrid like we're doing right now?
Thank you for that comment. I appreciate that. Yes, and we do apologize for the Kennedy and the Richmond conversations. We were thinking that we could make those live in real time, but yes, we can certainly commit to those being hybrid.
And then my second question is, does the district have an idea of a quorum number? So if you have a meeting in area 1, but only 2 people show up, does that mean, you know, that's, we would listen to those 2 people, but that's not considered a meeting because we want a cross section of the community to be there. So is there a number of, we want to make sure we have this many students participating, we want to make sure we have this many parents, we want to make sure we have this many community members, we want to make sure we have this many teachers, this many admin, et cetera. Is that a number that, or a matrix that the district has developed when deciding that they want to ensure that they're really hearing community voice?
Yeah, that's a very good point. We've not defined a number, but what I can share with you, Trustee Smith Folds, is we're starting even this month and going to next month, we're gonna have a cross section of our community and we're gonna talk about the process. So we can even talk about what is the number, the quorum number that we want to really gauge where we say we've had enough participation. What I will say is very important for me as superintendent that we get a max number of people and we think about a lot of different venues. So not just the trustee areas. If someone can't attend, how else are we reaching out to individuals to make sure that they're participating in the process? Because just think about it, this is going to redefine our district, everything that I just shared with you. So it's important that we talk to as many people as possible. But to answer your question, we're starting with a cross-section of people, and I can add that question to the list when we start talking about that.
Thank you. And I would like to kind of double down on that and make sure we're intentional. So we're reaching out to our ELACs, we're reaching out to our APAC, we're reaching out to our special ed students and their families and their parents. We're reaching out to transitional parents. We're reaching out to all of these parents who reside in our school communities to ensure that we are getting a full understanding of what's going to be the West Contra Costa way. Thank you. That's it.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, ma'am.
Board, again, we have a lot to do tonight. So when you're asking your questions, please limit your questions to questions, and we'll have time at the end of the meeting to make our comments, but this is a question period. Mr. Trujillo?
Yes. So did you say this would start with area 1 or will it be with all areas at the same time?
Thank you for that question, sir. It's going to start with area 1 and then area 2 and so on and so forth. But then as I shared, it's going to be 3 rotations, because if you think about the process, the visioning process and all the other processes, you're starting with just introducing everyone to the process and then coming back again and synthesizing those ideas. And then the third time would be really a final product and making sure that everyone was happy with the final product. Now I'm just sharing with you, there's 3 rotations. Once I form the group and the committee, it may morph into something more, and it may be more sessions. But my thinking right now is 3 rotations for each individual area, 1 at a time.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Trujillo, was that one question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Dr. Hurst.
Next, we have Mr. Booker for COVID response.
Thank you, Dr. Hurst. Good evening, esteemed board. Like Dr. Hurst said, we're going to give you updates regarding our COVID testing. I have a representative from LSA. He is the managing partner, and that's Mr. Rob McConnell. He will talk about some of the testing that we've done and how it works, and then some of the things that go into our testing. As you remember, we went to rapid testing when we changed companies. And with that testing, they are subject to false positive tests. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll also talk about some of the CDPH updates, as well as our contact tracing team, how it's structured, what their responsibilities are, and what the outcome is for contact tracing. And then finally, we'll look at our dashboard and see what some of our results have been thus far. Next slide, please. Like I said, with any testing, especially with antigen testing, we look at what factors can impact the results of the COVID test. And without going into great detail, because we'll talk about this during the question session, and Mr. McConnell can give you a little bit more detail with regard to that. But there are several factors that go into the actual testing. One being viral load, the sensitivity and specificity, the stage of the infection, the immune response and of the infected person, the different laboratory methods that are used, the different testing, and then finally, the sample collection and handling process. Next slide, please. Currently, in our district, we use 3 products for our testing. We use the Abbott Bionex Now. This is a rapid test that is used by the CDPH's program. And of the rapid test, it is the most accurate. We also were using Access Bio Care Start, and that was an FDA approved testing. And then we use Quidel QuickView, which we currently use for our PCR testing. The methods that we use, or that is used by LSA, are the anterior nasal swab, and we do that on a weekly cadence for each of our schools. We also have the ability to do an oral swab if requested. And then finally, we do PCR testing, and that is used as a confirmatory test for any positive rapid test that we get. And those results usually are returned within 2 calendar days. Like I said, with any antigen testing or any testing, it has to be FDA approved, and it's granted a EUA, which is an emergency use authorization. But the FDA has said that no test is 100% accurate. And the testing depends on the number of tests and the patient factors, as well as current community transmission rates. Next slide, please. In this slide, we took a 4-week period, and we started from October 11th and ended on November 5th. And what we covered was week by week, and we do this as a report overall, but during this 4 weeks, we looked at false positives, actual positives, cases that were contact traced, and the total number of tests for that week. And as you can see, for week 1, we had 10 false positives. The actual positives were 13, and the cases that were contact traced by our contact tracing team were 213, and we tested 6,115 people. The next week, we had 4 positives, or false positives, 10 actual positives, 48 cases were contact traced, and we tested 6,797 people. In that third week, we had 9 false positives, 11 actual positives. 166 cases were contact trace, and we tested a total of 6,963 people. And in that final week into November, we had 24 false positives. Actual positives were 36, and we contact traced 329 cases, and we tested a total of 6,922. And if you remember, this was shortly after Halloween. So we did have a slight increase. And in full transparency, we did have some issues with the product that we were using, which was the Care Start product. There were a number of tests that were rejected. Those tests were given a PCR confirmatory to all those people that had tested positive during that time, and those tests came back negative. Next slide, please. So CDPH gives guidance. We follow those guidance as well as county health. And the guidance that I'll talk about briefly is the updated guidance recommendation for confirmatory and screening testing. If they talk about in this update, they talk about PCR testing is only required once a week, whereas antigen testing, if you're doing weekly testing, is required twice per week. We also look at the updated guidance with regard to guidance to align with the CDC's recommendation for fully vaccinated people. Specifically, they talk about individuals who are asymptomatic, fully vaccinated, and who have been in close contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 should be tested 5 to 7 days after the close contact that has occurred. If they develop symptoms of COVID-19, they should be tested right away, and they should also be placed into quarantine. And then finally, with molecular testing or PCR testing, it's most effective if the turnaround time is short, within 2 days. As far as our PCR testing goes, we test, our results are returned from LSA within a 24 to 36 hour period. Next slide. So this slide shows the org chart for our contact tracing team. Specifically, I am the manager for this team. We have a team coordinator, which is a district nurse, Mr. Lee. We have a project manager who is Phyllis Rosen, who gives the information to our labor partners. But we also have 2 lead nurses, or LVNs, that have the responsibility of delegating these cases to our 11 contact tracers that we have in on our team. Next slide, please. This is the process or the timeline for our contact tracing. And I've showed this before, but just to reiterate it, when we get the information, a site leader, which is the principal or a supervisor, gets this information and submits it into a Google form that we use that auto-populates into a spreadsheet that the contact tracing team uses. The contact tracing team receives this information, and those cases are delegated, like I said, to from the lead nurses. The contact tracing process begins, they notify the principal after receiving the case, and then they start their contact tracing process. As far as the positive person, they contact them, and they contact anybody that was in close contact of that positive person. They also have a responsibility to report to the county within a 24-hour period once they get the case. And then, like I said, our our project manager has a responsibility to let our labor partners know of a positive case. And then once the case is complete, the principal has a responsibility for sending these exposure letters to staff and students that were in close contact, as well as the community letter for the positive case. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have a dashboard that is updated daily. This dashboard shows the total staff numbers that tested positive, as well as the student numbers, how many classes that we have closed, and the total number of cases that we have. As of this date, we have tested approximately over 54,000 people for our testing process for our district. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you very much, sir. Board, I'm asking you to limit to 4 questions. And the other thing I want to let you know is based on the 45 minutes for closed session to go back in there, we need to leave here at 9:40. And that will give us 45 minutes to get back in there and then to get back out here and report. So all of our work, these presentations for the superintendent's report, the action items, everything needs to be done by 9:40. Mr. Krishna?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy?
Thank you. I just have one question. Mr. Booker, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. About the false
Mr. Gonzalez-Hoy,
Sorry.
really quickly, I'm sorry. This is the presentation that would include LSA too, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you guys have questions, you can ask LSA as well, not just Mr. Booker. That's why I wanted to.
No problem. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. LSA.
Mr. McConnell.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not sure if this question is for you or for Mr. Booker, but in the situations of the false positives, what is the turnaround in order for us to figure out if that is an actual positive case? Would you mind going into a little bit of detail on that? Because it has been a big issue that we've had to figure out in the last few weeks.
Yes, so on the one-off PCR tests, which are in response to a positive antigen test, the result time is 48 hours. If we were doing a more consistent PCR program, we could expedite and ship them. Like last week when there was some difficulties with the rejected test, we flew somebody from the lab to take them directly to the lab and get a fast result. If we were doing PCR in higher volume, we would do that daily. So it's just what we're capable of. With the ones coming from each school, it's hard to get them transported fast enough when it's such a low volume. But in that situation, it's 48 hours. In a high volume situation, it would be considerably faster.
Got it. Thank you. So then if there's a false positive, we would know within 48 hours of the student testing.
Correct. We always do a PCR on every positive, and within 48 hours, we can either validate that positive or, prove that it's a false positive.
Got it. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. That's it, President Phillips.
Mrs. Reckler?
Thank you. This one I believe is for LSA. Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. Are we now only using the Abbott Binex now?
Yes, the supply chain has normalized. There was a government, I don't know what the right word was, but the government had purchased $640 million worth of product and made it hard for the supply chain to access those tests. That has been rectified, and we have enough Abbott to last the remainder of the school year.
Okay, and that is the test that is the most accurate.
We believe it's the most reputable product. I'm not the manufacturer. It's hard to speak to the exact details. The Quidel Quick View is also very accurate, but it's very cumbersome to take. I think the Binex Now product by Abbott Laboratories is the most applicable and reliable for what we're doing.
Okay, and then I think another one for LSA is there any way that you can contract with a lab here so that we can get PCRs back in 24 instead of 48 hours?
Well, the issue is just transportation. So we can get them in volume between 24 and 36 hours. But that's as fast as we can do. It just, that, you know, just to be realistic, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I think 24 is a fair estimate. It's just, there has to be some room for error. You know, we have power outages, things happen. I think if you use the numbers 24 to 36 hours on PCR, we can deliver on that consistently, but it requires volume. Today, each PCR comes from different directions. There's an average of 12 sites testing every day, and those nurses have to report it, get it, transport it, get the PCR done. It's a little bit difficult in today's system when the PCR is a contingency plan or a validating factor. It's not the everyday use. If it was the everyday use, we would fly them back and forth every night. It's hard to be predictable with the way it is today.
Okay, thank you. I think the other two are for over here. So for Mr. Booker, can you please outline the exact process and protocol that an administrator principal follows to get PCR results? I have principals telling me that the only way they get results is through a parent telling them.
Yeah, so what happens is they have access to their school's portal, and those results come through the GVP portal. So they would get those results just like they would a antigen test. And actually, Mr. McConnell can speak more to that process.
Mike's on. Do I need to put, is that better? Thank you. The biggest issue is that the parents have ordered a test in the system, which is an antigen test. It doesn't differentiate between PCR and antigen for the consent form, but the child who's taking the test hasn't ordered a second test. So it is a little bit cumbersome because they're working under one authorization and one order number. So sometimes that's created confusion for the principals to find it and see it through GVP. We've updated that system to make it faster, but the laboratory management system is the one that gets and records that test, because there's two tests ordered that day under one order. So that's where the confusion comes from for the principals, and why sometimes it can be a little harder to see it through GVP.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is for low testing schools, Helms, Hercules High, Kennedy, Pinole Middle, that have really low testing levels. What steps are being taken to increase the number of signups that they have so that we can get more kids tested?
So I've been to each one of those schools and talked to the principals or the administrator that is in charge of the testing process. Like I said in earlier meetings, we have talked to our labor partners about doing a registration fair. We have had some difficulties with doing that on the weekend, mainly because of weather. But that is in the process of happening, where we get these fairs and get people registered. We are going to sites and making sure that the process that the school is going by is a process that is universal, meaning that some schools just let the kids go to a designated area. They don't have any supervision. And so therefore you're not getting the number of kids that you would like to be tested, or staff for that matter, to be tested on their testing day. So we're just making sure we're codifying their process and making sure that they're sending, we put the information on our district website, but we also ask that the schools put it on their website as well. And then sending out communications to the families. And if the families don't have a clear understanding, making sure that, we did it earlier, we haven't done it since, but we had sessions where LSA went over this process, how to register, what the test is like. We did a number of those all the way up until I think October 18th. And so we are looking at other processes to try to get more families or more people involved. but it's a matter of logistics and making sure that they're following the same protocols that we're using throughout the district.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, ma'am. Trustee Smith Folds?
President Phillips, before I ask my questions on this, I do have a clarification point that I would like to bring up. When we took the vote for going back to closed session, we didn't put a time on it. I don't have a doubt that we would finish by 9:40. I just want to ensure that when we took that vote, it was more broad as we kind of finish this work and then we go back to closed session. I just wanted to make that clear for the record. But now for my questions.
Before you go on.
Yes, sir.
When you say that there was no time on what?
There was no time. So when we took the vote, the way the vote was framed, it was, we will recess closed session where we are. Then we will go back to open session, do the business of the board, and then we will leave open session and come back and reconvene closed session for a maximum up to 45 minutes in that closed session. So we didn't put a time frame on, we will be out of open session by 9 o'clock to make sure that we're able to finish the meeting by 10:30. That was never put on there. So I believe the intention of the motion was to say we recess closed session to make sure that we're out in open session by 6:30. We do the business of the board that's on the agenda, and then we go back to closed session at the end of this close of business and open session. I don't think that we're going to go past 9:40. I just wanted to make sure that there was a clear understanding of what we actually said in the vote that passed when we took it.
Thank you. And not to have a debate about it, but what was expressed to me was that, because I did step out of the room, but what was expressed to me was that it was a maximum of 45 minutes. I heard you say that the superintendent told me that. Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy confirmed that as well. So
yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Please, our meetings end at 10:30. So if we just do the math, that means that we need to be out of here by 9:40. So that's what we're going to shoot for. Trustee Smith Folds, your questions.
Thank you for that. And yes, it was 45 minutes, but it was, again, the clarity that I spoke about before. So my question is, Mr. Booker, oral versus anterior nasal swab, do we know if one is better than the other?
That's a question probably better suited for Mr. McConnell.
Thank you. Mr. McConnell?
Yes, again, this may be something that, it's not my determination.
We can't hear you, Mr. McConnell. I think you're on mute.
I think I'm better now, sorry. Anterior nares is a better collection method than an oral swab. There's an oral pharyngeal swab, which is a lot more invasive than anterior nares or like a cheek swab. But there's no comparison between a cheek swab and an anterior nares. It is a better collection.
Thank you for that. And then Mr. Booker, do we know or have a breakdown on the COVID dashboard of how many teachers versus students versus community members are being tested? So we have that 54,000 tested, right? Is there a breakdown? And it may be on the dashboard, but is there a breakdown to say, these are the number of teachers that are tested out of that 54, these are the number of students tested, these are the number of community members?
So the breakdown is for staff and students. So we don't necessarily have community members or a detailed breakdown to if it was a teacher or a food service worker. We know based on the information that we get and through our contact tracing, but on the dashboard, it's just discerned by student or staff.
Okay, and do we see, because you have the internal data, internally, are we seeing the number of students being tested going up?
In terms of the testing, we are seeing an increase in testing for students and staff.
Okay, thank you for that. My last question is, on slide 10 of your slide deck, there was a part, and I don't know if you're able to pull it up or not, but if you could, I would like to speak to a specific part on slide 10.
I'm just looking through it. Okay.
So on slide 10, and I'm paraphrasing because it's not in front of me, but on slide 10, it said something to the effect of asymptomatic vaccinated students. You know the bullet I'm talking about, Mr. Booker? Okay, so, and
it's for any individual, not just students. It's any individual.
So any fully vaccinated individual who is showing asymptomatic symptoms should be tested within, did it say 5 to 7 days?
That is correct. If they've been in close contact of a positive case.
Are they still on campus or are they at home?
They are at work or in school, unless they are symptomatic. If they are symptomatic, then they are put into quarantine.
Okay. Those are all 4 of my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Trujillo?
Thank you. I have 2 questions. The first one would probably be for, LSA, Mr. McConnell, is it?
Yeah, for the record, my name is Robert McConnell.
Robert, okay, thank you. The first one would be, is the Abbott by Next Now test not FDA approved?
I believe that all of these tests are under the emergency use authorization. I'm not sure if any of them have full FDA approval at this time.
Got it, thank you. Then my second question would be for Mr. Booker. Do you have any update on the vaccine clinics? I remember a couple meetings ago hearing something about the vaccine clinic not returning to Kennedy by a community member. So do you have any update on the next round of vaccine clinics?
So with the vaccine clinics, we've done a number of them. And if it was taking off the board, it was because of low turnout, low participation. Did that answer your question?
Not exactly.
Okay. Can you say it again then?
Will the vaccine clinics return to all the school sites that had the first ones?
Yes, that is our plan.
So even though it's the plan, is it going to happen? Do we have the dates confirmed for when they'll return?
Ms. Martin will speak to that.
I will come back with some of the dates. So what happened was with some of the clinics that had the first round, they did stop the clinics at some of the schools, and mainly because there was low turnout. And so what they were trying to do is create hubs where students could go to get the second vaccine. So it does not necessarily mean that it will be going back to that particular school site if they receive their first shot there. So what the county is trying to do, just because they want to control, their staffing and ensure that they're meeting the demands and being in schools and places where there's more signups, they're trying to have more hubs for some of these vaccine clinics. I did not provide an update on the vaccine clinics in this presentation, but I can bring that forward. I can pass that along to the board and to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Those
You're
are
welcome.
my 2 questions I have at this moment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Dr.
Thank
Hurst?
Yes, sir. Now we're going to turn it over to Larisha Martin.
Good evening, board and community. I'm going to provide a couple of updates on Vista Virtual Academy. There had been a concern around food distribution at Vista Virtual, and we've started food pickup on 10/29/21. We had 120 meals, so we gave out breakfast and lunch to students and families who were there to pick up food. We currently have 258 students enrolled in Virtual Academy and 137 enrolled in Vista High School. They're thinking about rebranding the school to call it Vista Family of Schools. So we'll be providing an update or getting your feedback from the board on that. The Vista staff are still working on the wait list and adding students as they can. 20 students transferred back to in-person school, mainly because those students are now vaccinated. So parents felt because they were now vaccinated, they could return to in-person learning. Vista's planning is working on a plan with HR and executive director to be ready for January when all students will be required to be vaccinated. So I'll talk about the hiring. There's several positions that are posted on EdJoin and Indeed to continue hiring for Vista Virtual. Principal McCormick submitted 5 teachers for hire. She received 1 transfer teacher and another teacher was just recently cleared in HR. So that is a total of 7. Principal McCormick is working with the elementary director of curriculum instruction and assessment on their ELA implementation materials and will conduct additional professional development on 12/3/2021 with her staff. Vista staff are creating small groups, intervention groups for students and using a team teaching model with their RSP team and classroom support aides. Parent faculty organization is in its founding stages, and room parents have been established in majority of the classroom. So they are room parents in the classroom, really supporting organizing Vista. Parents are supporting with organizing in-person hubs for students. These in-person hubs are mainly for social emotional learning and for play. Materials are available at both sites, Richmond and El Cerrito, for pickup for parents. This is just a breakdown of students. So in kinder all the way to 12th grade, you can see the number of students in Virtual Academy as of 11/15/21. Next slide. This is our students broken down by ethnicity, the percent that we have at Vista Virtual Academy. This is our current wait list of students by grade level at Vista Virtual. And this is the wait list broken down by subgroups as well. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Christian, any questions?
Yes, thank you. And just going back on the waiting list, how many students on the waiting list now?
It's 281.
And are we making more preparations of hiring more staff, teachers to accommodate the big load?
I think what, as we give these data reports, I think one thing that is not sort of showing is that there actually have been students, the students are moving back and forth. So you have some students coming off the wait list, some students going back to in-person instruction. There were 71 new applications yesterday. So when you look at this list, 781, it was actually lower, but there's 71 new applications since the mandate started. You've had an influx of students going back and forth. So what's happening is students are getting vaccinated, they're going back to in-person instruction. Students who don't want to be vaccinated are now being added to the wait list. So it somewhat seems that the wait list is growing and the Virtual Academy is not taking in more students, but in fact they are. It's just the list, the numbers of students keep shifting.
Okay, so like when January comes, will we be able to accommodate?
Well, that's the plan. She just hired 5 new teachers. They have to be onboarded by HR. There was 1 transfer, so there's technically 2 more teachers there. And then the 5 hires. So once they are fully all processed, we expect that Vista Virtual will be able to at least take, we actually did the number, 72 new students. So you'll have a cohort of 25, 25. We're going to move 14 to the high school. And then there's another spot where we can put 8 more students at the high school level. So that totals 72 students. So the goal is to have this down before Christmas, at least down another 72 students from the wait list. But she's continuing to hire.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Are we in constant communication with all the families in the wait list?
The families on the wait list, when they do the enrollment now, it lets them know that they do not disenroll from their school. They must stay enrolled at their school until they receive a phone call to actually participate in Edith's orientation, which are held on Fridays. She does reach out to families. I cannot say specifically or for sure how often, but I could find out.
And then are we investigating more creative tools in case we were not to be able to hire more teachers for January? Like online programs or other means of supporting students to get the education they need?
So are you saying in place of a teacher? Trustee Hoy?
Yes, in place of a regular classroom, are we looking at other means? Like there are programs out there that can potentially accommodate larger number of students. Are we looking at those in case, worst case scenario, there are no candidates as teachers, so that we can have students be accommodated and served in some way at least?
Mhm. No, we have not looked at alternative enrollment options beyond an actual classroom teacher, but we can look into that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my last question. Thanks, Ms. Martin.
Mhm.
Mrs. Reckler.
Thank you. I really only have one that's kind of a follow-up to both that were asked before. What's your best estimate of the number of students that might be enrolling due to the mandate?
We don't really know if it's because of the mandate, but as of yesterday, there were 71 new applications into Virtual Academy. We are assuming because those are 71 brand new applications in November, that they are because of the mandate.
Is there a plan in place to be a little more specific about vetting that and sussing it out?
Sussing out the 71 new applications to find out if they are because of the vaccine mandate?
Yeah, just in general, how the mandate is going to affect enrollment in the virtual school.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, in cabinet, we are in executive team, we are constantly looking at the number of students who are getting vaccinated and then trying to compare that to, okay, what are the numbers going to be in Vista Virtual? So we're constantly looking at if students are being vaccinated and then what the impact is going to be. And so hopefully before January, we'll have a better number of how many students are actually will be vaccinated. I think we'll have a better understanding then if parents will enroll in Vista Virtual. In the meantime, Edith, I've told her, we have discussed at least getting up to 13 more teachers at Vista Virtual to try and accommodate what we believe will probably be somewhere around 300 more students added to this list that's currently here.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Smith Folds.
So I have a question. Ms. Martin, in January, will Vista students need to be vaccinated because they're doing in-person hubs?
Yes,
So all students, whether you're in Vista or not, need to be vaccinated if you're going to participate in an in-person hub.
that is correct.
Okay, and then when Ms. Jordan McCormick is going to hire these 13 teachers, is that hiring process open now to teachers internally transferring? Because you said we have one transfer person who is now getting ready to be onboarded. Does that open up for all teachers who are wanting to transfer from inside the district?
We have started having that discussion. I believe Ms. Williams is still on here and she can be more specific around the transfer to Vista. I don't know the specifics of that teacher. I do know that we have started engaging more regarding teachers who will not get vaccinated or who are, will not be vaccinated. What is our plan for those teachers? And should they be able to teach at Vista Virtual? We have discussed that in executive cabinet. I don't know if Ms. Williams wants to go more specifically around our thoughts around teachers and transfers because of the vaccine mandate.
So we originally discussed that we would not be doing transfers. I don't recall the specific case, but that was not part of but we are open to that discussion. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so you're open to the discussion of having teachers who are currently employed in our district schools to have the opportunity to transfer into Vista Virtual Academy, the Vista Family Virtual Academy. Okay, and then Ms. Martin, did we do the survey of the current Vista families who are currently enrolled to see if they will be going back to their school, if they're planning on staying at Vista? Did we do that survey as of yet?
No, there has not been a survey regarding if families will be going back or not.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that is for Ms. Martin. I will send a couple of more questions over about Vista through the superintendent, if you don't mind. Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Trujillo?
Yes, it's just a very brief question. You mentioned changing the name of one, was it, you said Vista Family of Schools, and would that include just Vista Land and Vista Virtual?
Yes.
And just follow up, what's the reason for this name change?
I am not sure, Mr. Trujillo. That is a comment that Ms. McCormick gave me, that's something that they've been talking about as a staff and a community. I can get more information to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of the presentations on this evening. Dr. Hurst and Mr. Booker and Mrs. Martin, we appreciate the work that you are doing. That concludes the superintendent's report. We're now going to go to our first action item, which is certificated provisional internship permit. Ms. Williams is not here, so.
I'm here.
All right, Ms. Williams, there you are. I'm looking for you.
I know.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
All right. Tonight we're here with the certificated provisional internship permit and looking for board approval. So the PIP was created in response to the phasing out of the emergency permit, and it allows an employing agency to hire an individual who has not yet met the subject matter competency requirement needed to enter an internship program. Prior to requesting a PIP, the district must verify that a diligent search has been made, which we have done for a fully credentialed teacher. And the PIP is issued for 1 year only. So we are looking for approval for that this evening.
Board, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that's the trigger finger. Go ahead, Mr. Gonzalez.
So moved, President Phillips.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Gonzalez Hoy, seconded by Christian. Board, is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, Mr. Christian,
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, oh yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes, the motion carries. So, Miss Williams, Mrs. Williams, Miss Williams, excuse me, this is yours too, I think.
Yep. So certificated board authorization for Ed Code 44258.3. This education code allows the governing board of a school district to authorize the holder of a credential in the following areas: multiple subject, standard elementary, single subject, and standard secondary, with his or her consent to teach a departmental class in grades K through 12, provided the teacher has adequate knowledge of subject matter. And again, seeking the board's approval for this tonight.
Board, any questions? All right, can I have a motion?
So moved, President Phillips.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy and seconded by Christian. Board, is there any discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, Mr. Christian?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, oh yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes, the motion carries.
All right, thank you.
All right. I need to hit this thing. I haven't hit it like once tonight. All right, E3, Pinole Valley High School magnetic hold open devices change order approval.
Yes, tonight we bring before you change order number 3 for the Pinole Valley High project. It is our policy to bring forward change orders that are either over 10% for the total contract value or over $250,000. This particular change order total is $5,686, which brings the total contract to 10.2% in change orders for this job. So we bring that tonight for approval.
Board, are there any questions? All right, is there a motion?
So moved, President Phillips.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded by Gonzalez Hoy and Christian. Board, is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, oh yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. Motion carries. All right, we have an item that was pulled off of the consent calendar for discussion. That's item C2, approval of fundraising activities. Trustee Smith Folds, you have the floor.
So in the very beginning of the school, when we talked about fundraisers, beginning of this current school year, we were told, the board was told that fundraisers are going to look different because of COVID protocols and procedures, meaning that the on-campus fundraisers would look different. So campuses could go out to like Chipotle or another restaurant and then have those type of fundraisers, but it was going to look differently on campus. I would just like a brief update as to what measures or what changes we are going to create around having now, according to this, on-campus fundraisers. If that's clear. If not, I'll be happy to clarify a little bit. Or a lot of it.
Making reference to COVID procedures and what are we doing differently, Trustee Smith Folds?
So yes, sir. So for example, if you're now going to be selling food on campus, right? What is that going to look like? If you're going to sell food, is it going to be always prepackaged? Is it going to be the use of the snack shack or the concession stand? Are you going to allow students, if they're doing their club fairs or club rush, are they now going to be able to do hot food? Like, for example, selling lumpia or noodles or slices of pizza. What is the new, are there any changes in the way that it was done pre-COVID, now post-COVID? And have we communicated that with our ASBs and our leadership teachers and our school sites to ensure that that oversight is managed, and who owns that oversight?
Gotcha, I hear you. I see Mr. Booker here, and I'll allow him to respond since it's related to COVID procedures.
So CDPH and the CDC has said that the most optimal area for that to happen is outdoors. But if it were to occur indoors, then they would need to have a designated area where people could eat that was away from the general population.
Okay, so if they are, for example, selling, Mr. Booker, if they're, for example, selling snacks and beverages, you're saying the most optimal thing would be to do that outside. If you're selling snacks and beverages inside, like at an inside concession shack or concession stand, then another layer of protection would need to be added to that, correct?
That is correct.
And then are we okaying eating inside our buildings outside of like the cafeteria? So for example, if I'm selling a donut, can I eat that donut on campus, or is it I'm selling the donut, got to take it home and it's at a certain time because it's after school? Or does that make sense? Are we allowing selling of items during school time, or is it only after school? And if it's after school, are we encouraging people to eat those items off campus instead of eating those items on campus? Have we looked into that, what that looks like, and have we set policy around that?
So as a matter of fact, we are currently in this discussion. So we are finalizing some things. I did put out some updated COVID advisory for the principals. We are in current discussions with that because we know that many of the extracurricular activities have fundraising projects or fundraising deals that they have. So we are currently talking about that, and I will update once it's finalized.
Thank you so much. And the same would go for things like fall carnivals, spring carnivals. What do those look like? How many persons? Are there only going to be vaccinated persons allowed to participate in fall and spring carnivals? Are they going to have the outside community able to come in if it's after school and purchase tickets and participate? Like, I'm just looking for a little clarification, and then how we are distributing that communication to all of our sites so that it's clear around the expectation of the fundraiser and the expectation of who's owning that fundraiser and who's owning the safety around that fundraiser, because it is different than it was pre-COVID.
So I did put out a extracurricular policy that all the principals have, and they have the responsibility to not only share it with their student and staff, but also their school communities. So there is a requirement, not only for vaccination, but if not vaccinated, a testing mandate for that. If it's outdoor, there is no limitation on the capacity. If it's indoor, there is a capacity limit.
Thank you for that. President Phillips, that's why I pulled this item. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Booker. Thank you for the clarification, Dr. Hurst. Once you get more of those things fleshed out, I would like a update, whether that's full board or personally. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Smithwold, you're moving the item?
I will move the item with the understanding of what we just talked about, Dr. Hurst, about making sure that we flush those items out clearly to principals and sites, and that our ASB is involved in understanding those boundaries around it, and our leadership classes are understanding the new parameters around safety when trying to do an old fundraiser a new way.
Thank you very much. Board, even though this was her item, do any of you have any questions? Any questions? Dr. Hurst, I do have one question. These fundraisers Are they going to permit parents and others who are not students at the school to be on campus?
Mr. Booker, what have we shared on that about parents?
So for parents, there is a mandate. And the short of it is that there is a vaccination mandate or to have a test within a 72-hour period in order for them to be on a campus. So it's no different than our visitors policy that we currently have in place.
Okay. Let me clarify something, because myself as a parent, I don't go on campus, even though I have a badge and can pretty much walk around where I want, because I didn't think I was supposed to be there. So, and I think there are a whole bunch of parents who think that they're not supposed to be on campus. So are you all saying now that the policy is, as long as parents have a 48-hour test or have a vaccine card, that they can now be on campus?
So one, it's not just want to clarify, it's not 48 hours. It would be within a 72-hour period of the event. And our vaccination, be fully vaccinated. However, you still would have to let the school know by appointment that you're going to be on that campus. So they would have a list of people that would be on that campus, and that's for contact tracing purposes.
Is there a motion for this? Trustee Smith Bowles made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Board, is there any discussion?
I do have a discussion point, President Phillips.
I do too. You go ahead.
I think that Dr. Hurst, I'm a little confused. I'm just confused about when there's a shift in policy or when there's a shift in what we stated before and when there's a shift in what we're doing currently or what we're going to do. So for me, I would like a little bit more understanding or awareness or when we make those shifts, like, right, when do we turn those corners? Are we turning corners? Are we making shifts because now we have a vaccination mandate? And then if we're making that shift, what does that shift now look like? If we're making a shift because numbers are down or infection rate is down, whatever it is, I just need to know the correlation between a policy change and a shift, right? Because I didn't think that parents were allowed on campus either. And then I want to ensure that we are having some equity across zip code, right? So if we're having that equity across zip code, one of the best places to have those conversations is on the dais, because then we can kind of lay it flat and lay it firm. And then we can have, the communication department, you can have the communication department, then turn around and flush that out to our families and our parents. Again, Mr. Booker, I would really like to this particular issue to make sure that we're clear with our ASBs, our associated student bodies, and our leadership teachers about what the requirements are, what it's supposed to look like, who's owning that. And I don't want to put anything more on teachers and principals on their plates without giving them the support to do that. Because now having a campus open to anyone who is vaccinated or has a 72-hour test, that increases the bandwidth, because we had a very small bandwidth in the beginning for the first couple of months, or a very small population of people on campus. Now that's increasing, but I don't know if the bandwidth of us being able to handle that increases. So I would just like to lend my support, but also lend my cautionary tale and ask for more information than not around those issues. Thank you.
And I just want to clarify that a parent would still have to make an appointment, and we do have the right to refuse a parent on campus. So it's not just having the test or being vaccinated. You do have to make an appointment.
So they would have to make an appointment to come get the fundraiser?
To be involved in the fundraiser?
No, so that doesn't even make sense. They would have to make, there's a fundraiser on campus, and any parent that wants to participate in the fundraiser, they have to make an appointment to do the fundraiser. That's not how schools work.
No, you are correct. But I thought you were talking about parents that were volunteering.
Mr. Gonzalez Hoy, and this part is the board discussion, so it's not Q&A anyway, so we shouldn't be doing that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Booker, Dr. Hurst, I do think that there's some confusion that has come out of maybe this conversation. I heard a policy change, but I also heard that parents need to make an appointment. I think this caused some confusion to me. And I hope that it's not causing confusion to site leaders or to parents. Because I do think that there are site leaders who are being very cautious and thoughtful about their fundraising. And they are following the previous policy about not allowing parents on campus. But if there are other campuses that are allowing parents now, I think it's going to cause inconsistencies and confusion in the system. And then I don't want families to get upset at site leaders or staff because their site leaders are being thoughtful about the policy. So anyways, all that to say, I'm leaving a little confused after this conversation because of my previous understanding of families coming to sites. I don't think that there should also be a difference between fundraisers and parent volunteers, right? I think that we should have the same policy if I'm a parent wanting to go into the school and if I'm a parent going into a fundraiser. If it's happening at our site, in my opinion, it should stay consistent no matter what, because otherwise it causes confusion and chaos. Okay, I'll leave it there. If you wouldn't mind maybe following up with us on clarity, maybe through Friday memo, I would appreciate it. That's it, President Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Reckler?
I just echo Trustee Gonzalez-Hoy's sentiments that there is confusion about who is on campus, when, where, why, how, what the protocols are. So it would be good if we could get a second look at that. Thanks.
I didn't think that I was supposed to be on campus. Even though I have the ability to go on campus, I have specifically stayed off of my child's campus because I do not want people to see me on the campus and then say, well, if he's there, why can't we be there? And he has special privileges. I have specifically stayed off of my child's campus for that very reason, even though I know that I could come on and no one would stop me. I think that it is dangerous to have adults walking around the campus. I think that this is a policy change, and I think that this is a big policy change. And I do not think that that is something that the staff should be deciding on its own. I think that that is something that needs to come to the board. Sure.
Yeah, I hear the board's comments. I certainly will talk with staff and I will get clarity and bring it back to the board.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, this has been moved. It's been seconded. Board, we've had our discussion. Vote your conscience. Christian?
Yes. Gonzalez, oh yes.
Reckler, yes.
Dr. Hurst Smith Folds, yes, with the understanding of what we talked about very clearly laid out to all of our parties on the sites.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, no. Motion carries. Okay, it is now 9:07. And we have to go back into closed session. But before we go back into closed session, while people are watching, so they don't have to wait around to hear our comments, we're going to do those now. So we're going to do comments from the Board of Education. And let me pull this. A timer up. All right. So four minutes apiece. And we are starting with Christian. Whenever you're ready, buddy.
All right, thank you. And I want to thank staff, superintendent, for the information presentation this evening. And I want to just say that I've been recently doing, visits, at certain schools to just to do some checks. And so tomorrow I'll be going to Lincoln Elementary in the morning. And I want to say today I had a chance to visit the Central Kitchen and had a tour through the kitchen of how all the food and everything, the process of how everything is working down there. And so I said hello to all the staff and all those that were there. And they appreciated me coming in and connecting. And then also, I had a chance to visit a lot of the other schools with some of the other board trustees, Demetrio Gonzalez-Hoy and Jamila Smith-Foles here at DeJohn Middle School. And then also we covered Kennedy High School and a few other schools. So still more schools to do, still more places to go to connect with everyone. So and I just want to say we have a lot of work to continue to do to improve and make our district become a stronger district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, President Phillips. To follow up on what my colleague was saying, on Friday, we are visiting Kensington Elementary School and Bayview Elementary School as well. So any of you are welcome. I'm excited to go see those schools tomorrow. Dr. Hurst and I and Trustee Smith-Foltz are meeting with Valley View families as well. And then I just wanted to spend the rest of my time just thanking staff. Next week is Thanksgiving week. I just want to say that what I'm going to pray and say thanks for is all of you out there who are working with our children and our students. This has been an crazy time. I know the schools are working harder than they've ever had to work before, from our classified staff to our superintendent and everybody in between. You have been working incredibly hard at a time without subs, at a time where there's a pandemic going on, at a time where we have a teacher shortage, at a time where education is still not funded what it should be, at a time where trauma is incredibly impacting our families and our community. So I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing. We've been brainstorming around how we can appreciate you more than just saying thanks. We're going to continue to think about that. Dr. Hurst, we have to put our minds together to do that, because our teachers, our classified staff, our principals, our central office admin, they all need and deserve some appreciation because they're working incredibly hard. So we see you, but we know that you deserve something more than just our thanks. So we're going to continue to brainstorm how we can support you. I did want to thank our superintendent and his staff for subbing last Friday. I know there were a lot of openings and they all roll up their sleeves and went to classrooms and subbed. I know that some of my colleagues were at schools as well. I was subbing, which was just gave me a little bit of insight of obviously what our teachers are going through. I'm just incredibly thankful for everybody, and to finish with my colleagues as well, our student trustees. I just want to say thank you to all of you and wishing you all a very happy Thanksgiving break. Oh, sorry. And one last thing, President Phillips, we've been getting a lot of emails about the 7-Eleven committee and the CBOC. I was wondering if Dr. Hurst, maybe you could share a little bit more information about that and whether or not we should be having a discussion about the appointments to the CBOC, maybe on a Friday memo. And then if we need to schedule it in a meeting, I would love to have a discussion about that. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And Trustee Reckler.
Thank you very much. First, I just want to wrap up the meeting with a few things. And so I'd like to encourage district staff to really start working on a real plan for Vista about who plans to enroll, who plans to disenroll. I think that is super important because this mandate is right around the corner, and I'm not feeling like everything's all lined up there. So perhaps a very direct email out to the community. Are you planning to go virtual? Give us your information so that we can track you. So I think that is super important and then a priority. I would like to see vaccine clinic, this discussion about the vaccine clinics and all of that. That update dropped in the Friday memo because also we're coming up close on some deadlines. And so we should really understand where we are and what's happening. So Friday memo on that. We talked about, I would like you to strongly encourage you to correct or spell out the protocols to administrators to access PCR tests. I think that's important because I keep hearing that over and over, that they cannot get the results and then therefore do not know how to instruct their families and students. I'd also like to see if we can get PCR tests expedited to 24 hours. Seems like it might be possible. Push a little, because that means kids come back to the classroom faster. Okay, so there's all of that. Next meeting, I guess we're going to be doing financials. So that means first interim. It means the FCMAT fiscal health risk analysis update, updates to all budgets or streams of money for one-time funds, what you're spending it on, what your budget was, actual, budget to actual, and then an update on LCAP spending, once again, what you were planning, budget, actual, where you are year to date. Okay, so that's all of that. Then I want to just El Cerrito Sports has had a really good season. El Cerrito cross country, there were many girls and boys that went to all league, and the varsity runners are going to be at Hayward NCS on November 20th. Yay. And then we have girls volleyball sent Miss Gonzalez to first team, Miss Lohier, Miss Nagal, and Miss Bishop to second team. In water polo, the girls finished second and the boys finished third in TCAL. Many went to all league. Girls tennis went 9-4. They would have been 10-4, but they had a weather-related call where they couldn't play. Many went to first team, and El Cerrito will be at Windsor football. El Cerrito football will be at Windsor. They made the semifinals in a wild second half last Friday. You can get tickets on GoFan, which is this new site where you just put in your information and it's electronic ticketing. You show your ticket on your phone, and they'll be at Windsor. They could use fans. So if you want to take a drive up there and support the team, that would be terrific. And then I want to end giving thanks and gratitude to everyone for all that you're doing, and to remember Debbie Hawakaya Wing. To me, she's Debbie. She lived in my community. Our kids went to school together. She has always supported kids and students throughout all the time that I've known her. Learning of her death was a complete shock to me. She was very active in El Cerrito High School bands, Korematsu Band, El Cerrito High School bands, any community event, she was there, working the event, handing out food, volunteering. This is a terrible loss to our community. And I want to tell her family and friends that I'm holding you in my heart. And I'm wishing you peace on this passing. And I thank you for the opportunity to acknowledge her. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Trustee Smith-Folds, let me start the time over for you, okay? Whenever you're ready.
This evening, I just want to go over agenda items and then quickly just add a sentence or two about the future agenda items. I still want to have a conversation about adult school and the uses of the adult school building. Also want to ensure that the adult school building, both campuses have everything that they need. I still like to talk about trade school opportunities inside of our schools and what that looks like, being very creative with our options that we're giving to students. I would like to talk about period poverty. We need to have that discussion and what the school is going to do to ensure that our students have access to everything that they need around their periods. I still would like to talk about standing reports, and inside of standing reports, I want to make sure that we bring back student standing reports. I would like to have a conversation about dress code. I would like to see some data around dress coding and who has been dress coded and for what reason on campuses. We still need to have a full conversation about numerical literacy and the overall literacy gaps and strategies we're implementing in our district, the equity statement and enforcement, a clear understanding of the West Contra Costa way around equity. I would like to have a conversation about public comment. I still feel like we are not having a clear and concise conversation and giving it our due diligence around what we can do to have the best way of running public comment. There needs to be a revision of the bylaws and the governance handbook. So if there's a subcommittee that needs to be formed, we need to take a vote on that and discuss who's going to be part of that, and we can get that work done. Want to have a conversation around preschool and TK aides. We know that there's going to be a need, there is already a need to have more preschool and TK aides, but we also know that there are laws coming down from the state around that. The transition program and all the inclusion. I still think that we need to have a full conversation around virtual school. I think tonight showed that we're having still more questions are formulating around virtual school. So if we could get the more information, the better. Remote working, I think, needs to come to the board for a update. I would like to talk about the narrative report cards, and are we giving teachers enough time to have enough time to make thoughtful comments on those report cards, and is that working? The vaccine implementation, a full conversation about what's the implementation look like, who holds that work, and are we able to get answers to how many students are already vaccinated according to the mandate that we have. I want to talk about the mental and emotional health of all of our students and our educators. Burnout is real and it's happening at a great level on every single site. So what are we doing around that? What strategies do we have in place? And how are we providing resources, both people resources and financial resources, to help slow down and hopefully stop that burnout? I want to make sure that we now have accessible drinking water on all of our campuses. If we could get an update about that. We know that in the very beginning of the year, there was issues around drinking water for students and staff. I want to have a conversation, or at least announce about the senior programs, the adult senior programs, making an announcement that that has been resolved for this year, but then we need to talk about permanent funding for those senior programs. I want to talk about the site standard safety for all schools. We need to discuss cameras, doorbells, and training. I would like to talk about period subbing. The issue around subbing is a complex issue. We need to talk about what do we look at with the pay around people who are not teachers in subbing or staff in subbing, but who subbing is their only job that they have. There is an issue around when they get paid and how often they get paid. Let's have a conversation about that. I also want to have a conversation about traffic, our pickup and our drop off on all of our sites, because we know that there are some sites that is a really hectic time. And if we could start working with our cities to have an integrated program of how we are going to ensure traffic safety around pickup and drop off of our students. I would like to echo that. I would like to have a conversation about the 7-Eleven committee. I would like that to be broadcast out and exactly what it is, who we're looking for, why we're looking for this committee to be filled, and what work they will be doing, and how often, all of the logistics around it. I'd like to have a conversation about CBOC and the applications that are in the queue and what we are planning on doing with that. And I would like to know, I would like to see the district do a survey to parents about intentions. I believe Trustee Reckler spoke to this, a survey about what your intentions are come January. What are your intentions for your students? So then we can have some clear planning. And then based on our conversation tonight, I really want to end saying that I really would like some clear safety policies around not just fundraising, but if there's a shift in our policy, if we can have that conversation brought back to the board about what that shift's like. So it's twofold. One, specifically around fundraising, extracurricular events on campuses, because very soon we should be having conversations around proms or around graduations or around all these other events that happen starting in the spring, senior nights, other things that happen at our schools. I would like for us to have a clear understanding of what our expectation around safety is. And again, I don't want it from zip code to zip code, because I think that breeds inequity. We saw that around the conversations about homecoming dances and homecoming parades. It looked different from site to site to site. And that means that some kids are getting a different educational experience than others. And I want us to make sure that we are the most equitable that we can be, because we are the most transparent and we're the most policy-driven district that we can be. To conclude, I'd like to say thank you to all the teachers. Thank you to all the staff. Thank you to all the administrators. Thank you to all our certificated and classified employees. Thank you to district workers. This is not easy, but it's not impossible. I think that we can all work together to make sure that we are literally having a community-run school board, that we can take in community voice, that we can advocate for one another, that we can advocate for what's best for the students, and the students can advocate for themselves, and we can listen to that. And we can make sure that we're providing the best experience for our students, our staff, our teachers, our community organizations, and everyone who touches or is touched by WCCUSD. Dr. Hurst, I'm here to support that vision and that mission, and I look forward to us doing the work, continuing to do the work. Again, thank you, everyone. Please have a safe vacation, and we will see you after that. That's it, President Phillips.
Okay, Mr. Trujillo, 4 minutes. I'm resetting your time whenever you are ready to go.
Thank you. I don't have too much to say. Actually, well, I do have some stuff to say, more than usual, I guess. First, I'd like to say thank you to everybody, staff, teachers, the board, the public, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. It's difficult right now, as it always is, but you know, we'll make it through these tough situations. Another thing I want to point out is maybe you know, we had a lot of parents come out and speak tonight, and I think it'd be cool to send out a survey to parents as well as students about the vaccine mandate. Like, as a student, I know many other students whose opinions have changed about it, or who just have different opinions, and maybe it'd be interesting to hear their perspective, as well as parents possibly asking, well, one, what I think is really important is to just understand how our community feels about it, and two, this can help get the numbers for the virtual academy and what we expect for the virtual academy in the spring. I also want to mention public comment, making sure that it doesn't reach an hour. I know that sometimes there's hands that are raised after the time given to raise hands, and just, you know, giving those people time to speak would get closer to that hour that we are supposed to allocate to public comment. Another thing I want to mention, or the last thing I want to mention, is I had a parent concerned about their students' music program at Kennedy High School. I don't know too much about that situation, but it had to do with funding, I believe, and just not having adequate supplies, such as reeds for instruments, pencils, that sort of thing. I'll look into it more myself, and I'd encourage others to as well. And just to support arts education in general, because I'm a huge arts guy, and I think arts education is super important and often one of the first things to be cut in districts across this country. And yeah, just again, thank you for giving me the time to speak. That'll be all.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to thank really everybody that's part of this system. This is a lot, and it's been a lot for a long time. People in this community, and when I say community, I mean the entire school community. So parents, guardians, students, staff, booster, everybody who is in this fight for education. As time goes on, I think we're going to find that we're making progress in a lot of areas, that the district is turning a corner for the better. And I think it's a corner that we've all wanted to turn for a really long time. And my hope and my prayer for this district is that we allow this process to play out. I know that we've gone through different iterations of imagining this and imagining that, and it seems to all be often for naught. I really do think, though, that we have something really special here. We have a community that wants to see, desperately wants to see something different for its children. And I frankly think that we have the best superintendent in the Bay Area. And I think that if we really focus, and we really work on the things that are the heaviest lifts for our district, that we will come out on the other end, the district that we've always wanted to be. This equity process, or this equity analysis, or this equity audit that we're going through, it's not a show. It's not a show. When we're having meetings about reimagining Richmond and Kennedy, it's not a show. Maybe before it didn't work. Maybe somebody said this in the past. Maybe somebody said that in the past. But I'm telling you, what's happening right now is not a show. It is real. And the only thing that can stop us from being successful, the only thing that could stop us from turning this ship that everybody has been trying to turn around for decades, for generations, is us. Us. And if we stop us from being successful, it's a damn shame, because there are tens of thousands of children, there are cities, there are communities that are depending on us to get it right. So my request to this community, to this board, is to follow the process that the superintendent is laying out in the equity audit, and we will get there. And to listen and to follow, and I say to listen and to follow because if we knew how to do it by ourselves, it would have been done a long time ago. The truth is we don't know how to do it by ourselves. The truth is we hired the best superintendent in the Bay Area because he knows how to do it. So please, let's put ego and anything else aside and just listen to what this man has to say and follow for the sake of all of our children. Those are my comments. Thank you so much. The next board meeting, the next regular board meeting is going to be on December 8th here at Lavanya Dijon. Dr. Hurst said earlier that we are looking to schedule a special meeting specifically to go over the board audit, because there has been an audit of the board. There are findings and recommendations that have come out of that. So we need to meet regarding that. That said, board, it is now 9:32. And I announced earlier that we were going to go back into closed session for up to 45 minutes to finish some business. I'm just going to repeat what the closed session items were, so everyone knows. They are, once again, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, public employee performance evaluation, public employee discipline, dismissal, release, complaint, student discipline, and public employee appointment. So when we go back in there, we're not taking additional public comment on these items, but I just want the public to know that we are going to still be limiting our discussion back there to the very same topics. After that's over, we will come back out here very briefly, simply to report out anything else that needs to be reported out, and then I'll adjourn the meeting. I'm just trying to telegraph to you all what's going on. So if you want to hear the report out later, that's the only reason to stay. You can, if you want, party on. But if you don't want to stay for that, you are welcome to leave as well. Thank you, everyone. And I am going to ask for a motion for us to recess back to closed session.
So moved, President Phillips.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it was moved by Gonzalez Hoy and it was seconded by Trustee Smith Folds. Board, can we vote?
Christian, yes.
Gonzalez, so yes.
Reckler, yes.
Smith Folds, yes.
Trujillo, yes.
Phillips, yes. Thank you. The board is going back to closed session. Okay. Hello, everybody. The board is reconvening open session. There is nothing to report out this evening. We reported out earlier, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.